If someone had told me a random Tuesday would return my past in a tailored suit and a question sharp as glass, I would have chosen another coffee shop. Picture this: you walk into your dream job, pulse hammering with excitement, only to come face to face with the last person you ever thought you'd see again, the woman whose heart you broke 5 years ago. Avery believed she'd buried that chapter of her life for good, but fate had other plans. Before we jump into this emotional roller coaster, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. The elevator doors opened on the 47th floor and everything changed. With a soft ding, the doors slid apart, and I stepped onto the marble floors of Hale Industries. My heels clicked against the pristine surface as I took in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Midtown Arcadia, my heartbeat still racing and the past rising to meet me. This was it, my fresh start. "You must be Avery Carter," said a cheerful voice behind me. I turned to see a young woman with a bright smile and a tablet clutched to her chest. "That's me. Ready for my first day. I'm Nora Blake, Mr. Whitaker's assistant. He's waiting for you in conference room A. Just follow me." My heart hammered against my ribs as we walked down the hallway. After 5 years of freelancing from my tiny apartment in Cedar Ridge, I was finally back in the big leagues. The salary alone would change everything. I could finally pay off Dad's medical bills and maybe even save for that little house I'd been dreaming about. "The company's been growing like crazy," Nora chatted as we walked. "Ms. Hale really turned things around when she took over 3 years ago. She's incredible. Youngest female CEO in the industry." Something cold settled in my stomach. Ms. Hale. Veronica Hale. She's a genius. Honestly, transformed this place from a struggling startup into a multi-million-dollar empire. Nora's eyes practically sparkled with admiration. "You'll probably meet her later today." My legs felt like jelly. "Veronica here is the CEO. I thought I might throw up. Are you okay?" Nora stopped walking, concern creasing her features. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I managed, forcing a smile. "Just first day nerves, but I wasn't fine. Not even close." We reached the conference room and through the glass walls. I could see a man in his 50s shuffling through papers. "Mr. Whitaker?" I assumed, but my eyes were already scanning the office beyond, searching for a glimpse of auburn hair and sharp green eyes. Deep breaths, I whispered to myself. Nora knocked and opened the door. "Mr. Whitaker. Avery Carter is here." The man looked up with a warm smile. "Avery, welcome aboard. Please have a seat." I slid into the chair across from him, my hands trembling slightly as I placed my portfolio on the table. "Focus, Avery. You need this job." "Your portfolio is impressive," Mr. Whitaker said, flipping through my work samples. "The rebrand you did for Morrison Tech was exactly what we're looking for here. Clean, modern, sophisticated." "Thank you. I believe good design should tell a story while serving its purpose." "Exactly what Ms. Hale said when she reviewed your application." He closed the portfolio and leaned back. "She was quite insistent that we bring you on board." My blood turned to ice. She reviewed my application. Of course, she personally approves all senior-level hires. Mr. Whitaker tilted his head. "Is there a problem?" "No. No problem at all." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. She knew. Veronica knew I was coming and she'd approved it anyway. But why? "Well, then let me show you to your office and introduce you to the team." I followed him out of the conference room on unsteady legs. The hallway seemed to stretch endlessly before us, each step bringing me closer to an inevitable confrontation I'd spent 5 years trying to avoid. "Your office is just down here," Mr. Whitaker said, gesturing to a corner space with huge windows. "And the design team sits right over there." As we approached my new workspace, I caught sight of a figure in the hallway ahead, tall, elegant, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. Auburn hair pulled back in a sleek bun. My heart stopped. Veronica Hale stood 30 feet away, talking to a group of executives. Even from a distance, she commanded attention, confident posture, animated gestures, that same magnetic presence that had drawn me to her all those years ago. She looked up. Our eyes met across the bustling office space. Time froze. Her face went completely blank, like a mask sliding into place. But for just a split second, I saw something flicker in those green eyes. Surprise, hurt, anger. Maybe all three. "Miss Hale," Mr. Whitaker called out cheerfully. "Perfect timing. I'd like you to meet our new senior designer, Avery Carter." Veronica's heels clicked against the floor as she approached us. Each step felt like a countdown to disaster. "Miss Carter," she said when she reached us, extending her hand. Her voice was perfectly professional, giving nothing away. "Welcome to Hale Industries." I took her hand and the contact sent electricity shooting up my arm. Her skin was still soft, but her grip was firm, controlled. The woman I'd once known, the one who used to trace patterns on my back while we talked about our dreams, was buried somewhere beneath this polished exterior. "Thank you, Miss Hale," I managed. "I'm excited to be here." "I'm sure you are." Her smile was razor sharp. "Mr. Whitaker. I trust you'll make sure Miss Carter gets properly oriented." The way she said oriented made it sound like a threat. Of course, Mr. Whitaker beamed, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. "Avery, why don't you get settled in? Team meeting is at 2. Veronica's eyes never left mine. "I look forward to seeing what you can do, Miss Carter. I have very high expectations." With that, she turned and walked away, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm against the floor. I stood there, watching her go, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I barely made it to the bathroom before my legs gave out. Gripping the marble sink, I stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face was ghost white and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. 5 years. 5 years of building a new life, of convincing myself I'd moved on, and it all crumbled the moment I saw her. "Get it together, Avery," I whispered to my reflection. "You need this job." But how was I supposed to work here? How was I supposed to sit in meetings with her? Take direction from her? Pretend like we were strangers when she used to be everything to me? My phone buzzed. A text from my dad. "How's the first day going, sweetheart? I'm so proud of you." I closed my eyes, remembering why I was here. Dad's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and this job was my ticket to financial stability. I couldn't let my past with Veronica derail my future. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my shoulders and walked back to my office. The design team was exactly what I'd expected from a high-end firm, young, trendy, and intimidatingly talented. They welcomed me with the kind of polite enthusiasm that said they were reserving judgment until they saw what I could do. "So, you're the mysterious Avery Carter," said Liam, a guy with perfectly styled hair and designer glasses. "Veronica's been talking about bringing you on board for weeks." My stomach dropped. "She has?" "Oh, yeah," chimed in Chloe, a petite woman with pink streaks in her hair. "She saw your Morrison Tech rebrand and went crazy for it. Said it was exactly the kind of fresh perspective we needed. She specifically requested you," added Ethan, the team lead. "That's pretty rare. Veronica usually lets us handle our own hiring." I forced a smile, but inside my mind was racing. Why would Veronica specifically want me here? Was this some kind of elaborate revenge plot, or was there something else going on? "Well, I'm excited to contribute," I said, settling into my new workspace. The afternoon flew by in a blur of introductions, system login, and project briefings. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. But every time someone mentioned Veronica's name, my concentration shattered. At 4:30, Nora appeared at my desk. "Miss Hale would like to see you in her office." My blood went cold. Now? Now. The executive floor was all quiet power, cream walls, modern art, everything curated and restrained. Veronica's corner office sat behind frosted glass with her name etched in elegant script. I knocked lightly. "Come in." She was behind a massive mahogany desk, eyes on her laptop, not sparing me a glance, leaving me standing like a supplicant waiting for an audience. The space was gorgeous, floor-to-ceiling windows with a sweeping view of Kingsley Park, sophisticated decor without the chill. But the personal details hooked me: a framed photo of Veronica with an older woman who had to be her mother. A small succulent on the sill, and on the bookshelf behind her, a little ceramic owl I'd made for her in college. She'd kept it. "Sit," Veronica said, still not looking up. I sank into one of the leather chairs opposite, heart pounding. At last she closed the laptop and met my gaze. Her green eyes gave nothing away, but the faint set of her jaw and the quiet tap of her fingers on the desk told their own story. "So," she said, voice perfectly controlled, "Avery Carter, back in New Avalon." "Veronica, Miss Hale," she snapped, crisp as glass. "In this office, it's Miss Hale." The correction landed like a slap. "Miss Hale," I repeated. I want you to know I had no idea you worked here when I applied. Didn't you? She leaned back, studying me like a puzzle she intended to solve. Because I find it very interesting that after 5 years of radio silence, you suddenly apply to my company. It wasn't like that. I needed a job, and this position matched my skill set. I swear I didn't know. Veronica's laugh was cool. Your skill set, right? She opened a folder. Freelance work for the last 5 years. Small clients, modest projects. Nothing like what you used to do. Heat climbed my cheeks, of course she'd done her homework. I've been rebuilding my portfolio, I said, defensive despite myself. In Cedar Ridge. Her eyes never left mine. Interesting choice. Very quiet, very far away from anyone who might know you. The accusation in her voice was unmistakable. She thought I'd run away, hidden myself in some small city to avoid facing what I'd done. She wasn't entirely wrong. I had my reasons for leaving New Avalon, I said quietly. I'm sure you did. Veronica stood up and walked to the window. Her back to me. The question is, Avery, what are your reasons for coming back? I stared at her silhouette against the window. Even angry, even cold, she was still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. The years had only refined her beauty, adding an edge of sophistication that made her even more magnetic. I told you I needed a job. There are jobs in Cedar Ridge, jobs in Rainmere, Baylight, dozens of other cities. She turned back to face me. Why here? Why my company? Because this is the best opportunity I've had in years, I said honestly. Because the salary will change my life. Because I'm tired of scraping by on small projects and living paycheck to paycheck. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Well, she said, returning to her desk. You're here now. And since I personally vouched for your hiring, your performance reflects on me. I won't let you down. No, Veronica said, her voice like steel. You won't because I'll be watching every move you make, every project you touch, every decision you make. You wanted this job, Avery. You've got it, but you'll earn every penny. I stood up, my legs unsteady. Is that all for now? She opened her laptop again, dismissing me. Oh, and Avery. I paused at the door. Yes. Don't think for 1 second that what we had before gives you any special treatment here. In this building, you're just another employee. Nothing more. The words cut deep, but I kept my expression neutral. Understood. I walked out of her office with as much dignity as I could muster, but inside I was falling apart. This was going to be hell. That night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment staring at the Chinese takeout growing cold on my coffee table. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Veronica's face. The way her expression had gone blank when she saw me, the cold professionalism that had replaced the warmth I used to know. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder I'd sworn I'd never look at again. Photos from our college years, from the 2 years we'd lived together after graduation. Veronica laughing at something I'd said. Veronica asleep on our couch, her hair spread across the cushions like spun gold. Veronica on the morning I'd left, still sleeping peacefully, unaware that when she woke up, I'd be gone. My phone rang, startling me out of the memory. Hey, Dad. Avery, how was your first day? I've been thinking about you all afternoon. I forced brightness into my voice. It was great. The office is incredible and the team seems really talented. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you for taking this leap. Guilt twisted in my stomach. Dad had no idea what this job was costing me emotionally. He'd been through enough without worrying about my complicated past. How are you feeling? I asked, changing the subject. Good days and bad days, you know how it is. But the new treatment is helping. Dr. Alvarez thinks we caught it early enough. Early enough. The words that had changed everything 5 years ago. The phone call that had shattered my world and sent me running from the life I'd built with Veronica. I'm glad. I said softly. I love you, Dad. I love you, too, sweetheart. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another big day. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment, remembering 5 years ago. Avery, you have to come home now. Mom's voice had been shaking. And I'd known immediately that something was terribly wrong. What happened? It's your father. He collapsed at work. They're running tests, but Avery, they think it might be cancer. The world had tilted sideways. Dad, who'd never been sick a day in his life. Dad who'd raised me alone after Mom died when I was 12. Dad who'd worked 2 jobs to put me through art school and never once complained. I'm coming. I'd said, already reaching for my suitcase. What about Veronica? What about your job? I'd looked around the apartment Veronica and I shared at, the life we'd built together. The gallery opening we'd planned for next month. The vacation to Aurelia we'd been saving for the ring I'd been secretly shopping for. I'll figure it out, I'd said. But I hadn't figured it out. I'd panicked. Veronica had been at a client meeting, and I'd known she wouldn't be back for hours. I'd written a note, a coward's note that explained nothing, and left it on the kitchen counter. Then I'd packed my things and caught the first flight to Cedar Ridge. I told myself I'd call her once I knew what we were dealing with, once I had a plan, once I could think straight. But days had turned into weeks and weeks into months. Dad's treatment had been brutal, expensive, all-consuming. And the longer I waited to call Veronica, the harder it became. How do you explain to someone you love that you left because you were scared? That you chose your father over them? That you were too much of a coward to ask for help? So, I'd stayed silent, and eventually Veronica had stopped trying to reach me. Now sitting in my apartment with the weight of 5 years between us, I wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Work already. It was almost 10 p.m. The sender made my heart skip. v.hale@haleindustries.com. Subject, Project Assignment. Miss Carter, you'll be leading the Morrison Industries rebrand. Full presentation due Friday. Don't disappoint me. Bate muhale. I stared at the screen. Morrison Industries was one of their biggest clients, a multi-million-dollar account. For a first assignment, it was either a huge vote of confidence or a setup for failure. Knowing Veronica, it could be both. I spent the next 3 hours researching Morrison Industries, diving into their history, their market position, their competition. By 1 a.m., I had the beginnings of a strategy that I was actually excited about. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, hoping to avoid another awkward encounter with Veronica. But as I stepped off the elevator, I nearly collided with her. Sorry, I mumbled, stepping back. She was holding 2 coffee cups, and for a moment, I caught a whiff of her perfume. The same vanilla and jasmine scent she'd worn in college. It hit me like a physical blow, bringing back memories of lazy Sunday mornings and whispered conversations in the dark. You're here early, she observed. Morrison Industries project. I wanted to get a head start. Something shifted in her expression. You always were a perfectionist. The comment was so casual, so much like the old Veronica, that for a second I forgot where we were. You remember? Her mask slipped back into place immediately. I remember a lot of things, Avery. Not all of them pleasant. She started to walk away, then paused. There's a team meeting at 9 o'clock, conference room B, don't be late. I watched her go, my heart aching. Somewhere beneath that cold exterior was the woman who used to make me laugh until my sides hurt, who used to trace constellations on my skin and tell me stories about the stars. But that woman was gone, and I had no one to blame but myself. The Morrison Industries presentation was make or break, and I knew it. I'd spent 3 sleepless nights perfecting every detail, every slide, every transition. This wasn't just about proving myself to the team. This was about showing Veronica that I was still the designer she'd once believed in. Conference room A was packed. The entire design team, several account managers, and Veronica herself, sitting at the head of the table like a queen holding court. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Carter, she said, her voice giving nothing away. I connected my laptop to the projector, my hands surprisingly steady. Morrison Industries has been a leader in sustainable manufacturing for over 30 years, but their brand doesn't reflect that innovation. The first slide appeared, Morrison's current logo, outdated and cluttered. Their visual identity is stuck in the past, while their technology is pushing toward the future. We need to bridge that gap. I clicked to the next slide, revealing my proposed rebrand. Clean lines, modern typography, a color palette that spoke to both tradition and innovation. The new logo incorporates elements of their manufacturing heritage while embracing a forward-thinking aesthetic. The color scheme, deep forest green and steel blue, reflects their commitment to sustainability and industrial excellence. I could feel Veronica's eyes on me as I walked through each element of the rebrand. Website mock-ups, business cards, signage, even a concept for their factory uniforms. I'd thought of everything. The tagline "Building Tomorrow" positions them as industry leaders while honoring their legacy of quality craftsmanship. When I finished, the room was silent. I looked around the table trying to read their expressions. Liam was nodding appreciatively. Chloe looked impressed, but Veronica's face was unreadable. "Questions?" I asked. Ethan raised his hand. "The color palette is bold. Are you sure Morrison's board will agree to something this drastic?" Someone asked. "Change is exactly what they need," I answered. "Right now their brand is invisible. This rebrand makes them impossible to ignore." "What about implementation costs?" An account manager pressed. "I'd plan for that. I've proposed a phased rollout over 18 months, prioritizing the essentials first: logo, website, and core marketing materials, then a gradual expansion across all touchpoints." More questions came, and I handled each one without wavering. I'd done the work, and it showed. At last, Veronica spoke. "Thank you, Miss Carter. We'll review your proposal and get back to you." As the room emptied, she stayed seated. "Miss Carter, a word." My stomach tightened. Here it was. When we were alone, she rose and moved to the window. "Thank you," I said. I wasn't finished. She turned, eyes steady. "It was thorough, professional, and exactly what Morrison Industries needs." I blinked. "Really? Don't sound so surprised. I may have personal issues with you, Avery, but I won't sabotage my company out of spite." Personal issues, so clinical for what we'd been. "The presentation is strong," she continued, "but Morrison's CEO is old school, conservative. He'll push back on the bolder changes." "So what do you suggest?" Veronica stepped closer, that familiar scent washing over me. "Be ready for his objections. He'll call it too modern, too risky. You need to show him that sticking with the status quo is the bigger risk." She was helping me. Despite everything, she was actually helping. "Why?" I asked quietly. "Because this account is worth $3 million, and I'm not losing it over personal complications." But something in her eyes said it wasn't only about the money. "The meeting is tomorrow at 2, she said. "Don't make me regret recommending you for this." She paused at the door. "And Avery, wear the navy suit. Morrison's CEO is traditional. He responds better to a conservative presentation." After she left, I sat alone, mind spinning. She remembered I owned a navy suit. More than that, she remembered I looked good in it. Maybe there was hope. The next day, outside Kestrel Tower, I adjusted my navy jacket. Veronica was right. The place screamed old-school corporate America, marble, mahogany, and portraits of stern men in expensive suits. "Ready?" Veronica appeared at my side, stunning in a charcoal gray dress that hugged her curves, polished, but with just enough femininity to remind everyone she was a force. "Ready," I said. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent, tension humming between us. "Remember," Veronica said as we neared the conference room, "confidence is key. Morrison respects strength." The meeting unfolded exactly as she'd predicted. Richard Morrison, silver-haired and in his 60s, challenged every design choice, color, and strategic recommendation. "This is very modern," he said, frowning at the logo. "Modern, yes," I replied, "but grounded in your core values. The clean lines signal precision and quality, hallmarks of Morrison Industries for over 30 years. Your current logo has served you well and will always be part of your story, but your competitors are evolving. If you want the next generation of clients, your brand has to evolve too." I advanced to a slide of their primary competitors. "Look at their recent rebrands: leaner, more contemporary systems. Morrison can lead or follow." Morrison leaned back, considering. "Veronica, your take?" "I think Ms. Carter has presented a compelling case for change," Veronica said smoothly. "The question isn't whether Morrison Industries should rebrand. It's whether you want to do it proactively or reactively. Meaning you can control the narrative now or wait until market pressure forces your hand." I added, "This rebrand positions you as an industry leader, not a follower." Morrison was quiet for a long moment, then slowly he smiled. "You make a persuasive argument, Miss Carter. Let's do it." Relief flooded through me, but I kept my expression professional. "Excellent. I'll have the implementation timeline to you by end of week." As we left the building, Veronica was unusually quiet. "That went well," I said, trying to break the silence. "Yes, it did." She stopped walking and turned to face me. You were good in there. Really good. Thank you. Don't let it go to your head, she said. But there was no bite in her words. This is just the beginning. For a moment, we stood there on the busy New Avalon sidewalk. And I could almost pretend we were just two colleagues celebrating a successful meeting. Almost pretend that the weight of our history wasn't crushing the space between us. Veronica, I started, but she was already walking away. See you tomorrow, Miss Carter, she called over her shoulder. I watched her disappear into the crowd, my heart pounding. Something had shifted today. The ice between us had cracked just a little, but I knew that the real test was still coming. 3 weeks later, everything fell apart. The Morrison rebrand was moving smoothly. Too smoothly, I should have realized. The designs were approved, the timeline was set, and Richard Morrison himself had called to express his enthusiasm for the project. I was finally starting to feel like I belonged at Hale Industries. The team had accepted me. My confidence was growing, and even Veronica had begun treating me with something approaching professional respect. I should have known it wouldn't last. Avery, we need to talk. Veronica's voice was ice cold as she appeared at my desk. The entire design team looked up, sensing trouble. Of course, I said, following her to her office. She closed the door behind us and turned to face me, her green eyes blazing with fury. Care to explain this? She slammed a folder down on her desk. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were prints of emails, design files, and what looked like my old portfolio from 5 years ago. I don't understand, I said, genuinely confused. Morrison Industries just called. Apparently, they've discovered that the logo design you presented, the one they're about to spend $500,000 implementing, is remarkably similar to a design you created for a Cedar Ridge startup 3 years ago. My blood turned to ice. What? Zenith Technologies ring any bells? It did. Zenith had been a small tech startup that had hired me to create their visual identity. The project had lasted 2 months before they'd run out of funding and disappeared. Veronica, I can explain. Can you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you recycled an old design and passed it off as original work for Morrison Industries. That's not what happened. I stood up, my heart racing. Yes, there are similarities, but similarities. Veronica's voice rose. Avery, the logos are nearly identical. The only difference is the company name. I stared at the comparison images, my mind reeling. She was right. The logos were far too similar. But I hadn't done it intentionally. I swear to you, I didn't realize. You didn't realize? Veronica laughed bitterly. You're a professional designer, Avery. It's your job to realize these things. Sometimes designs evolve from previous work. It happens to every designer. I must have subconsciously plagiarized your own work and presented it to a $3 million client. Veronica shook her head. Do you have any idea what this could do to my company's reputation? The weight of what I'd done, intentionally or not, crashed down on me. Morrison Industries could sue. They could demand damages. They could destroy Hale Industries' reputation in the industry. Veronica, I'm so sorry. I'll fix this. I'll create a completely new design. With what time? Morrison's board meeting is tomorrow. They're presenting the rebrand to their shareholders next week. I felt sick. What can I do? You can pack your things. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're firing me. What choice do I have? Veronica's voice cracked slightly. I vouched for you, Avery. I put my reputation on the line to bring you here and you've made me look like a fool. Please just give me a chance to make this right, like you gave me a chance 5 years ago. The question hung in the air between us, loaded with years of hurt and anger. This isn't about us, I said desperately. This is about a mistake. Everything is about us, Veronica exploded. Don't you get that? The moment you walked back into my life, everything became about us, about what you did, about how you left me. Tears burned my eyes. Veronica, you destroyed me, Avery. Her voice was barely above a whisper now. You left without a word, without an explanation, without giving me a chance to fight for us. And now you're destroying my company, too. That's not fair. Fair? Veronica laughed harshly. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been a phone call. Fair would have been a conversation. Fair would have been treating me like I mattered enough to deserve an explanation. I was crying now. Tears streaming down my face. You did matter. You mattered more than anything. Then why did you leave? The question I'd been dreading for 5 years. The question I'd never been able to answer even to myself. I can't do this right now, I said, backing toward the door. Of course you can't. Veronica's voice was full of disgust. Running away is what you do best. I fled her office, grabbed my things from my desk, and made it to the elevator before completely breaking down. The design team watched in stunned silence as I waited for the doors to open. My career at Hale Industries over before it had really begun. As the elevator descended, I caught a glimpse of Veronica through her office window. She was standing with her back to the door, her shoulders shaking. I'd heard her again. Just like 5 years ago, I'd walked into her life and destroyed everything. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen. My bank account showed $847. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Dad's medical bills were piling up. And I was unemployed again with a professional reputation that was probably ruined. I'd lost everything again. My phone rang. Dad. Hey, sweetheart. How's the new job going? I closed my eyes, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. It's great, Dad. Really great. I'm so proud of you, Avery. I know how hard you've worked to get where you are. If only he knew where I actually was. Unemployed, heartbroken, and more lost than I'd ever been. I love you, Dad. I love you, too. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another day. But as I hung up the phone, I wondered if tomorrow would bring anything but more pain. I'd thought coming back to New Avalon was my chance at a fresh start. Instead, it had become my final undoing. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table sketching. Design after design, logo after logo, each one more desperate than the last. By morning, my trash can was overflowing with crumpled papers, and I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. But I also had something else, a completely new design for Morrison Industries. One that was fresh, original, and better than anything I'd ever created. At 7 a.m., I was standing outside Hale Industries, clutching my portfolio and what was left of my dignity. Miss Carter. The security guard looked surprised to see me. I thought you were. I need to see Ms. Hale. It's urgent. I'm sorry, but I have instructions. Please. My voice cracked. Just tell her I have a solution for Morrison Industries. 5 minutes. That's all I need. The guard studied my face, then picked up his phone. After a brief conversation, he nodded toward the elevators. 47th floor. She'll see you in conference room A. Veronica was already waiting when I arrived, her expression unreadable. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept much either. You have 5 minutes, she said without preamble. I connected my laptop to the projector with shaking hands. I know I messed up. I know I let you down, but I have a solution. The new logo appeared on the screen. Bold, innovative, completely different from anything I'd shown before. This is Morrison Industries' real rebrand, I said. Not recycled, not borrowed, not influenced by anything I've done before. This is original. Veronica leaned forward, studying the design. I could see her mind working, analyzing every element. The concept is forged forward, I continued. The logo incorporates an anvil and arrow motif representing both their manufacturing heritage and their commitment to progress. The typography is custom. The color palette is unique and the entire brand system is built from the ground up. I clicked through slide after slide. Business cards, letterhead, website mock-ups, even a concept for their factory signage. I'd worked all night, but it was worth it. This was the best work I'd ever done. The implementation timeline remains the same, I said. Morrison's board meeting is today, but if they approve this design, we can have preliminary materials ready by next week. Veronica was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the screen. It's good, she said finally. It's better than good, I said, my confidence growing. It's exactly what Morrison Industries needs. Why? Veronica's green eyes met mine. Why did you do this? You're not even employed here anymore. The question I'd been dreading because I owe you an explanation about the plagiarism about 5 years ago about everything. Veronica's expression hardened. Avery, please just let me say this. I took a deep breath. 5 years ago, I got a phone call. My dad had collapsed at work. The doctors thought it was cancer. Veronica's face went pale. What? I panicked. I knew I had to go home, but I also knew that if I told you, you'd want to come with me. You'd want to help. And I couldn't let you do that. Why not? Because you had the gallery opening. Because you had your career to think about. Because I was terrified that if you saw how bad things were, if you saw me falling apart, you'd realize I wasn't worth it. Tears were streaming down my face now. But I kept talking. So I ran. I left that stupid note and I ran because I was a coward who thought she was protecting you. And then days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months and I didn't know how to come back. How do you call someone after 6 months and say, "Sorry, I disappeared. My dad has cancer and I've been too scared to ask for help." Veronica was crying too now. Silent tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I spent 5 years in Cedar Ridge taking care of him. The treatments, the surgeries, the bills. I freelanced because I needed the flexibility, because I never knew when he'd need me. And I told myself I was doing the right thing. But really, I was just hiding. Avery, I'm not done. I stepped closer to her. The plagiarism wasn't intentional, but it was careless, inexcusable. I was so focused on impressing you, on proving I belonged here, that I didn't do my due diligence. I failed you professionally just like I failed you personally. Veronica stood up, her hands shaking. Your father, is he? He's okay. The treatment worked. He's in remission. I wiped my eyes. But that doesn't excuse what I did to you. To us, you should have told me, Veronica whispered. I would have understood. I would have helped. I know that now. But 5 years ago, I was 25 and terrified and convinced that I had to handle everything alone. Veronica walked to the window, her back to me. Do you have any idea what it was like? Coming home to that note, spending months wondering what I'd done wrong. I'm so sorry. I called you, texted, emailed. For 6 months, I tried to reach you. I know. I got every message and you ignored them because I didn't know what to say. Because every day that passed made it harder to explain. Veronica turned around, her green eyes blazing. You broke my heart, Avery, completely. It took me 3 years to stop looking for you in crowds, to stop hoping you'd walk through my door. I know, and I hate myself for it. Good, Veronica said fiercely. You should. We stood there in silence, the weight of 5 years of hurt and misunderstanding hanging between us. The Morrison presentation is in 4 hours, Veronica said finally. I know if I present your new design and Morrison approves it, you get your job back. My heart leaped. Really? But Veronica continued, we're not okay. This conversation doesn't fix what you did to us. It just explains it. I understand. Do you? Veronica stepped closer. Because I need to know that you're not going to run again. I need to know that if things get difficult, if life gets complicated, you're not going to disappear. I won't run, I said firmly. I'm done running. Veronica studied my face for a long moment. Well, see. She gathered her things and headed for the door. The Morrison meeting is at 2. Don't be late. As she reached the door, she paused. And Avery. The new design really is brilliant. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room, emotionally drained, but cautiously hopeful. I'd told her the truth. Finally, after 5 years of silence, I told her why I left. It didn't fix everything. It might not fix anything, but it was a start. The Morrison Industries boardroom was intimidatingly formal. Mahogany table, leather chairs, and oil paintings of company founders staring down from the walls. Richard Morrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by 6 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison began. As you know, we've been working with Hale Industries on a comprehensive rebrand. Veronica, the floor is yours. Veronica stood with perfect poise, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Everything was riding on this presentation. The account, my job, and maybe something more. Thank you, Richard. Before we begin, I want to address the elephant in the room. You've all heard about the concerns raised regarding our initial design proposal. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Word traveled fast in corporate circles. I'm here today to present a completely new concept. Veronica continued. One that not only addresses those concerns, but exceeds our original vision for Morrison Industries. She clicked to the first slide, and my new logo filled the screen. Even in this intimidating room, it looked strong, confident, perfect. The concept is forged forward, Veronica explained, and I felt a surge of pride hearing her present my work. This design honors Morrison's manufacturing heritage while positioning the company as an industry innovator. She walked through each element with the same passion and precision I'd seen her use 5 years ago when she was just starting her career. Watching her command the room, I was reminded of why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. The anvil represents strength and tradition, she said, while the arrow symbolizes progress and innovation. Together, they tell the story of a company that's built to last, but never stops moving forward. Board member after board member nodded approvingly. The design was working its magic. Implementation begins immediately, Veronica concluded. New business cards and letterhead next week. Website launch in 30 days. Full rollout complete within 6 months. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Richard Morrison began to clap and the rest of the board joined in. Outstanding, Morrison said. This is exactly what Morrison Industries needs. Bold, sophisticated, memorable. I'm glad you approve, Veronica replied smoothly. More than approve. This rebrand is going to transform how the market sees us. Morrison turned to his board. All in favor? 7 hands went up unanimously. Excellent, Veronica. Please extend our gratitude to your design team, particularly to Ms. Carter. This is exceptional work. Veronica's eyes found mine across the room. I'll be sure to pass that along. As we left the building, I felt like I was walking on air. We'd done it. The account was saved. My job was secure. And for the first time in weeks, Veronica was looking at me without anger in her eyes. Congratulations, she said as we reached the sidewalk. You saved the account. We saved it. I corrected. Your presentation was flawless. The design was flawless. The presentation was just delivery. We walked in comfortable silence for a few blocks. The afternoon sun warming our faces. It felt almost normal, like we were just 2 colleagues celebrating a successful meeting. Veronica, I said finally, I want you to know that I meant what I said earlier about not running. She stopped walking and turned to face me. Avery, what happened today doesn't erase 5 years. I know that. Do you? Because I can see it in your eyes. You think this fixes everything? I looked down at my hands. I hoped it might be a start. It is a start, Veronica said softly. But that's all it is. What do you need from me? I asked. To prove that I'm not going anywhere. Veronica was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. Time, she said finally. I need time to trust you again. Time to believe that you won't disappear the moment things get difficult. How much time? I don't know. Maybe months. Maybe years. She paused. Maybe never. The word stung, but I understood. Trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. However long it takes, don't wait for me, Avery. Live your life. Do your work. Be the person you want to be. If we're meant to find our way back to each other, we will. And if we're not, Veronica smiled sadly. Then at least we'll both know we tried. 6 months later. I was working late, putting the finishing touches on a presentation for a new client when Veronica appeared at my desk. Still here? She asked. Just wrapping up the Henderson Industries proposal. How's it looking? Good. Really good. I saved my work and looked up at her. What brings you by? I wanted to thank you for what? The Morrison rebrand won 3 industry awards this week. Design Excellence, Brand Innovation, and Campaign of the Year. My heart swelled with pride. That's incredible. It is, and it's largely thanks to your work, Veronica perched on the edge of my desk. I also wanted to tell you that I'm promoting you to creative director. I nearly fell out of my chair. What? Ethan's moving to our Renford office, and I need someone to lead the design team. You've more than proven yourself these past 6 months, Veronica. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. I laughed. Definitely yes. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The office quiet around us. Over the past 6 months, we'd slowly rebuilt our professional relationship. The sharp edges had softened. The tension had eased. And sometimes, like now, I caught glimpses of the woman I'd once loved. Avery, Veronica said quietly. I have something else to tell you. What? I've been thinking about what you said about your father, about why you left. She looked down at her hands. I understand now. I don't like it, but I understand it. Veronica, let me finish. I've spent 5 years being angry, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of carrying that hurt around. My heart began to race. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe it's time we tried being friends again. Real friends, not just colleagues. I'd like that, I said softly. Good. Veronica stood up. There's a new Italian place on 42nd Street. Want to grab dinner and celebrate your promotion? Are you asking me on a date? Veronica smiled. The first real smile I'd seen on her in 5 years. I'm asking you to dinner. And after that? We'll see. Walking out of the office side by side, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in ages: hope. We weren't who we were 5 years ago. Loss, time, and our choices had reshaped us both. Maybe that was the point. Maybe we could make something new from what had burned. Avery, Veronica said as we waited for the elevator, I need you to promise me something. Anything. If your father, work, life, if any of it gets complicated again, you'll tell me. No more running, no more silence. I promise, I said, and meant it. The doors slid open and we stepped in together. So, she asked on the way down, this Italian place, do they have good wine? The best, I said, grinning. And, Veronica? Yeah? Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for coming back. When the elevator opened onto the rush of New Avalon at dusk, I realized second chances are the kind you have to earn, and if you're lucky, love remembers how to forgive. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one, and tell me in the comments, do you believe in second chances? We didn't label it a date, neither of us wanted to spook the fragile thing we'd agreed to attempt, so we walked 2 blocks with our coats and our caution. Took a tiny table by the kitchen pass where servers shouted grazie over glassware. And talked like people relearning conversation without drawing blood. The burrata landed and sat for 10 minutes because we were busy gathering old threads. She asked about Dad. I asked about the board's appetite for risk after Morrison. We compared scars without naming them, and when the owner sent over 2 thimble-sized amari on the house. For luck, we laughed at how superstition could double as strategy. The check came, she reached, I reached. We split it cleanly and left with cold noses, matching please don't ruin this smiles. And separate cars because boundaries mattered. And the next morning there was no lingering at my door or reckless text. Just a forwarded calendar invite, Henderson Strategy Huddle, 30 minutes. Bring your gut, and I arrived with a deck and steadier hands. The weeks that followed were stitched from small repairs, not grand theatrics, post-its that read, good pull, on my comps. The ceramic owl migrating from her shelf to the credenza behind my chair during a rough vendor call like a sentry. A late night Slack where we disagreed without detonating anything and solved a problem so neatly that Liam posted a fireworks gif and we both pretended not to notice we were the only ones online at 1:14 a.m. On Saturdays I phoned Dad from my window and told him the city looked like a board of LEDs and that my boss, no, my CEO, had a spine of quiet steel, and he chuckled. Quiet steel is how bridges stand, kid, while I swallowed the ache of wanting to add that Veronica liked the same gelato place and had said my navy suit had the right kind of gravity. When winter salted the sidewalks, a rumor hit the trades that Hale Industries was overexposed on 3 accounts and ripe for a squeeze. And a cliff-edge-sounding hedge fund took a stake and started pushing for leadership modernization, which everyone understood meant Veronica on the chopping block. She didn't flinch in public, but the night the proxy filing went live I found her in the empty boardroom, jacket off. Sleeves shoved to the forearms I remembered and shouldn't have noticed, eyes ringed and bright. Staring down a spreadsheet like it had insulted her, and I shut the door, set a coffee at her elbow, and said, tell me where to stand, and she let out a not-quite laugh and said, beside me, so I did, through a weekend crafting a narrative that wasn't just true but undeniable, diversified pipeline. Retention up, margin lift from process redesign. Culture metrics with teeth. I rewrote case studies until the verbs carried momentum. And she stitched numbers into a story even cynics could track. And on Monday she walked into the special meeting with her hair in that uncompromising bun and emptied the room of air without raising her voice. And when the vote came, modernization lost by a margin that would make lesser people gloat. She didn't. She found me in the hall and said, simply, thank you, like she'd finally cracked a door, and I said, you kept the company. I stapled papers, and she shook her head, something gentler passing over her face, and said, you didn't run, which sent heat up my throat I blamed on the coffee. February brought sugared snow on the park and a call that dropped through my day like a stone, Dad's voice tight. The word shadow on a scan, the soft lie, it's probably nothing. Kiddo, that men use when they know exactly how much it is, and I looked up to see Veronica in her glass office reading the panic on me like type. I went in, shut the door, said it out loud, no note, no disappearing, no lie, and she skipped platitudes and task lists and said, "Book the flight. I'll have Nora shift Henderson. I'll meet you there Thursday night." And when I tried to argue, she reminded me, "You promised not to leave me out of the hard parts," so I did what I hadn't 5 years ago. Cedar Ridge was gray and damp, scented with cedar and hospital sanitizer. Dad rolled his eyes at the fuss and said, "It's a watch and wait." And I am excellent at both, and when Veronica walked in with decent coffee in a paper bag and a crossword, he looked at her like he'd expected her and said, "So you're the quiet steel," and she said, "I'm just someone who hates bad coffee," and they both pretended that was the truth. We didn't dig up the past in front of him, only the scant schedule, a better recliner, baseball because he insisted, and when we left that first night, Veronica didn't ask about the weathered family photos or the crayon drawing on the fridge a younger me had signed in crooked capitals. She just squeezed my hand in the parking lot, once, quickly, and let go. We worked out of a coffee shop with dodgy Wi-Fi and I presented a Henderson positioning over Zoom while a barista shouted milk orders behind me. And it didn't matter because the work was clear and the team trusted my voice now. And when we flew back, Dad texted her, not me, a thank you for watching my girl, and she showed me the message without commentary and I pretended not to cry on a very full plane. Spring pushed green up through the city's cracks and the Morrison rollout cascaded across billboards and packaging and a trade show floor where our Anvalero hung 2 stories tall. And a junior designer I'd fought to hire cried quietly under the lights because her banner had made a VP stop and ask a question. And I thought, this is what saving looks like, less like fireworks. More like a dozen people doing their jobs a little better because the ground under them is steady. On a Tuesday in April, the press got wind of our history, some overeager blogger connecting LinkedIn dates and a photograph from a college gallery opening where my hair was too long and Veronica's smile wasn't weaponized yet, and ran a piece implying my promotion was a pillow to boardroom pipeline. The comments, those tireless archivists of human smallness, arrived with knives and I could feel my team's eyes skittering away and back like birds. And Ethan called from Renford and swore volcanic vengeance and I said, "Don't," and Veronica called an all-hands with the calm of a conductor who knows where the downbeat lands. She didn't perform, she didn't emote. She did what leaders do when the train sways. She told the truth, about governance, about my performance metrics, about the independent panel we'd already instituted to vet promotions because companies shouldn't hinge on the comfort of one woman's ethics. Then she did something I didn't see coming. She said, in a voice that didn't tremble, that she and I had history, that we were rebuilding trust the slow way, that our policy barred anyone from reporting solely to someone with whom they had a personal entanglement, and that creative now reported to a new COO on paper while maintaining day-to-day autonomy. There was no apology for loving someone and no apology for refusing to let that love be used as a cudgel against the work, and when she finished, the room didn't clap, it didn't need to. It just relaxed by one measurable degree. And then we went back to the Henderson pitch because revenue pays salaries and dignity keeps people. That night she came to my apartment for the first time since the world had been a different shape and stood in the threshold like it might bite her. And I laughed and said, "There's nothing here but a plant I'm disappointing and a couch that squeaks," and she stepped in, set a grocery bag down, and took the ceramic owl out like an emissary returning from exile, putting it on my bookshelf beside a stack of sketchbooks as if to tell it, and me, stay. We cooked pasta with too much garlic and exactly enough olive oil and we didn't kiss because we were ridiculous about lines. But she fell asleep on my couch with her mouth open a fraction, an indignity I would have killed to witness in another lifetime, and I draped a blanket over her. And stood there for a long minute just memorizing the quiet, just collecting proof that time can fold back on itself without sinking you. Summer brought heat that turned the avenues into visible shimmer and an RFP that would triple our revenue if we won it and break our backs if we mishandled the scale. We put the A-team on it, not because we liked them best but because they listened best. And for 6 weeks the office smelled like dry erase markers and takeout containers. And I watched as the juniors began to see themselves as the kind of people who could carry something heavy and not drop it. The night before the pitch, the power blew on our floor with the kind of theatrical flourish only Midtown Arcadia can conjure at 11:23 p.m. Our models were live on machines we couldn't reach. The backups were at 90% sync, the generator was a rumor. And I felt the old panic compress my chest because this, right here, was exactly the sort of crack I used to tumble through. I walked to the emergency stairwell, shut the door, counted to 20 with my forehead on cool paint, and then went back in and said, "We're moving to my place," which made Liam howl because he thought I was joking. We weren't. 20 minutes later my living room was a war room, my kitchen counter was a battery of laptops. My coffee table a print station, Dad on FaceTime telling stupid jokes from his recliner because he said the key to keeping people awake at this hour was giving them a villain and a punchline. And when the sun dragged itself up behind the water towers we had something leaner and meaner than the version we'd been polishing to death. We won the RFP because the work was right and because the story hung together and because, when the client asked a sideways question about capacity, Veronica didn't sell a fantasy, she sold a plan with names and dates and penalties that made us accountable to the picture we'd painted. After the confetti that wasn't confetti, the celebratory bagels and the email from finance that said, politely, "Thank you for making numbers move," Veronica asked if I wanted to walk. And we did. All the way down to the part of the river where the air tastes like salt and metal, and there, with joggers threading around us like careful fish, she said, "I hated you," like it cost her something to put it in the past tense, and I said, "I hated me too," and she nodded and said, "Good. That makes two of us who won't make that mistake again," and then she reached into her pocket and took out a keycard with a tiny green dot on one corner and put it in my hand. I didn't ask what it opened because I knew, her building. Not because we were melting boundaries but because sometimes it rains. At 2 in the morning and she didn't want me on the sidewalk looking for a cab if I'd stayed too late at her place building. The kind of future that needs both of us. We still weren't dating, not officially. Not in the way that comes with captions. But there were Sunday mornings now where we walked to a farmer's market and argued about peaches and I bought too many flowers and she pretended to hate that I insisted on carrying them like a bouquet. There were Fridays when she went to therapy and left with a face like an unknotted rope and told me, months after she started, that she'd had to learn there are griefs we don't get to win against, only carry better. I booked my own sessions because love should make you brave but it can't do all your push-ups for you. And I said out loud, for the first time in a room with soft chairs, that running had been the thing I was best at and that I was done being proud of that talent. Autumn found us at a charity gala under chandeliers we didn't build and cameras we didn't invite. And the donors wanted photos with Veronica like she was a museum piece. And I hovered on the periphery eating asparagus I didn't want until she reached through a small crowd and caught my wrist. Gentle, grounding, and said, "Walk with me," and we did. Right out onto a balcony that smelled like rain and city. And she rested her elbows on the stone and said, almost amused, "Imagine telling little us that this is where we'd land," and I said, "Little us would have messed this up in 2 days," and she said, "Little us did," and then she turned, finally, and kissed me. Not as a prize for good behavior or a ceremony to mark a chapter break but as a simple, human thing, offered and taken. And I made a noise I didn't recognize and she smiled into it like we had time to learn a whole new language of sounds. After that we didn't pretend anymore about what we were, we just protected it like you protect a candle in a gust, hands cupped, body turned, plan ready. HR made us sign things, legal blessed the org chart. The COO joked she'd always wanted to be Cupid with a spreadsheet. And the team rolled their eyes in a way that meant they were rooting for us and also would not tolerate our drama in the Monday stand-up. Winter again, the city pulling on its glitter. And Dad called to say the shadow was unchanged and therefore uninteresting. And I sat on my kitchen floor and cried until Veronica came over with soup and said, "Let me do the dishes," in a tone that admitted this was not, strictly speaking, about dishes. We spent the holidays split between coasts, 1 week in Cedar Ridge where Dad beat her at cards and told her stories about me that I would have paid to edit. 1 week in New Avalon where we put up a tree that leaned like a ship and she pretended not to notice that the ornaments were every color and shape because aesthetics are for Q1 and joy doesn't have to match. On New Year's Eve, we stayed home and watched fireworks from her window, those sparks flinging themselves into brief, glamorous existence like tiny lessons in living, and at midnight she lifted her glass and said, "To staying," and I said, "To staying," and the word felt like a bridge with my name carved on it. By the time spring returned, Henderson had launched and our juniors were mid-air and grinning. And one afternoon I opened my desk drawer to find a little box and inside it not a ring because we are not fools about pace. But a key, not to her building, because I already had that, this one old and brass. To the office she keeps in her apartment, the one with the window you can open if you aren't afraid of air. And a note in her tidy, unsentimental hand, "Use this. Put things on the walls. Don't ask permission to be here, and I carried the key in my pocket for 3 days before I did. And when I finally showed up with a stack of prints and a fern and a sketch of an anvil that looked like a heart if you squinted, she didn't say anything, she just moved her laptop and made space. On an ordinary Tuesday at 4:07 p.m., Nora pinged to say Mr. Whitaker was retiring to a lake house and a vegetable garden that would not survive him. And we all feigned outrage and fought back tears and wrote him the kind of card that would make a person understand their life had mattered in daily, unglamorous increments, and at the little send-off in the cafe downstairs. He hugged me and whispered, "You did good, kid," and then, too soft for anyone else to hear, "Both of you did," and I pretended I didn't hear the second part because some gratitude is too big to touch. 1 year to the week after the night we split an Amaro and our carefulness, Veronica suggested, without looking at me, that we take 3 days and go somewhere with water and poor cell service. And I, a woman once welded to dread, said yes in under a second. We drove up the coast to a town that thinks clocks are rude, stayed in a place that smelled like lemons and salt, slept like people who trusted that morning would not bring catastrophe. And on the last afternoon we sat on a flat rock and watched the tide erase and redraw the same line, over and over, and she said, "I don't forgive the girl who left me. I love the woman who came back," and I said, "I don't forgive the girl who left you either. I'm trying very hard to be worth what you've had to unlearn," and she nodded like a judge and then ruined the effect by kissing me until the world blurred. When we returned, the elevator doors opened on the 47th floor with that same soft ding that once sounded like a verdict and now felt like a welcome. And the marble held our reflections as if to say, "Look, you're still here," and the office smelled like coffee and possibility, and the ceramic owl watched with blank, permanent attention as I set my bag down and checked the afternoon calendar and sent the note I send my father every day, just a photo of something that proves the world is still spinning. A window, a poster, a face, and then I looked up and found Veronica in her doorway. Neither CEO nor myth, just the person whose jaw I can read like weather. And she raised an eyebrow that asked, "Ready?" And I nodded because staying is an action, because trust is a muscle, because love at its most astonishing is so ordinary you almost miss it if you're busy looking for thunderbolts. And if you need proof that we learned, here it is. When the next crisis came, because they always do, it found 2 women not poised to run in opposite directions but standing shoulder to shoulder. Telling the truth, building the deck, calling the doctor, signing the policy. Hugging the intern in the stairwell where phones don't work and people do. Showing up at the scan and the stand-up and the birthday party with the same kind of attention. Answering hard questions with, "Here is what we know. Here is what we don't, here is what we will do next." And on a night that looked ordinary on the calendar and wasn't, after a long day that bent but didn't break us, I came home to a small envelope propped against the ceramic owl, my name written on it in that neat hand. And inside a single sheet with 4 lines that felt like a map: "Keep your courage. Change nothing about the way you tell the truth. Listen, when I forget I'm human. Choose us," and I laughed at how the impossible can look simple on paper. And when she came in with hair damp from rain and eyes bright from having been alive in the world, I held up the page and said, "I choose us," and she said, "I know," and the elevator that once delivered doom and then hope and then habit hummed somewhere behind the walls. The city breathed, and the future, once a door I was afraid to open, looked exactly like what we were already doing, staying, building, forgiving, beginning again, and again, and again.